Before we jump into this conversation, I wanted to let you know about something exciting I've been working on. As you might know, I'm incredibly passionate about helping people to find and share their voice, especially if their voice is one that aims to create positive change in others. So I've been working intentionally to bring that mission to life and have launched a new podcast network with purpose. It's called the Guide Your Light Network, and it features podcasts and voices that inspire, educate, and transform listeners. And we have a library of podcasts that are part of this network that truly embody that mission, and we are looking for more. So if this has sparked an interest in you and you're ready to start exploring speaking and using your voice in this way, I'd really love you to check it out. And if you have something important to say, but perhaps don't know where to start to bring it to life, we can also help to hold your hand through that process to craft your authentic message through our Guide Your Light sessions, where you can get super clear on your intention, messaging, and structure needed to launch a podcast of your own with purpose that is authentically you. So just click over to guideyourlightnetwork.com and you can find out more. Hey everybody, I'm Maritza Barone, and this is the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. Has there ever been a moment in your life where you heard or read or were told something that you simply could not unhear? Something that caused you to make positive changes so that you could become the best version of yourself? Well, we share this show with access to inspiring and empowering humans who will motivate you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate you. Sit back, settle in, and let this be the day you hear something that simply cannot be unheard. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Things You Can't Unhear. We've been having a great old time on the podcast lately, getting so much incredible feedback from you. And I really appreciate hearing from our listeners, because sometimes podcasting, believe it or not, can be a bit of a lonely game. You know, you put out these conversations that shift and inspire you out into the world and hope that they do the same for others. And, you know, that's the whole purpose of this podcast. And when I hear back from you all and hear from our listeners and you know, get that feedback to say, you know, that podcast shifted me, that conversation really did something to me, I needed to hear that. It really is the thing that keeps us podcasters going. And it helps us to feel connected to who's out there actually listening. So if you are listening to this podcast, and if you have for a long time, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love you to say hello, jump over to my Instagram or email me, whatever you want to do. I'll put the links in the show notes so you can reach out. But I'd love to say hello and see who's out there listening and get to know you guys on a deeper level so that we can continue to bring you conversations that light you up and spark you joy. So by now, you'd probably know that sharing people's stories for me is something that I'm truly passionate about. And today's guest shares that same passion. I share people's stories through podcasting, and she shares stories through books. Susan Dean is our guest today, and she's the founder of Dean Publishing, which is a publishing house that publishes hundreds of stories of inspiration, business success, personal triumph, charity development, and so much more. Their publishing house is called Dean Manor, and it's set on this beautiful property across 5 acres in the Macedon Ranges in Victoria. And it's a space where they bring their authors to ignite and spark creativity and bring their stories to life. Today we talk to Susan about her personal journey, what it takes to be able to author your own book, the different processes that Dean Publishing takes to help people to extract their stories, their lessons and their experiences, and so much more. So if you have ever thought about authoring a book and thought the traditional pathways of, you know, that image we get in our head of, you know, someone sitting at a typewriter in the forest for 12 months is not for you, this could be what you have needed to hear to get that book off the ground. So let's jump in. Welcome, Susan Dean, to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Where are you joining me from? You look like you're in the most exquisite location, and I'm sorry for people who are just listening on podcast, but I will share images of Susan's background. Can you describe where you are to us? Susan?
Yes, so I'm in the beautiful Macedon Ranges in Victoria. So some people may know it from Hanging Rock, or maybe even the movie Picnic at Hanging Rock. But yeah, beautiful area of the Macedon Ranges. And I'm located right now in Dean Manor, which is our publishing and production house that we have here. And yeah, it's a big, beautiful property with an 18-seater theatre and a podcast and audio room. And yeah, it's got all of our team here. So we get to work and be a part of a beautiful environment, both in the manor and obviously in the surrounding areas.
So cool. Do you live on the property as well?
No, I actually live across the road on another 5 acres, which isn't as beautiful as the manicured gardens here, let me tell you. Across the road is more the rustic setting, but yes, I live on 5 acres over there. So I'm a little bit spoiled that I get to, sometimes drive, but don't tell anyone. But I'm literally a walk across the road from where I live.
Oh, I love that. That is beautiful. It's nice to have things in close vicinity sometimes, makes life a lot easier. I'm so glad you're here today, Susan, because both you and I are very passionate about the power of story, and your vehicle to express the power of story is through books, and mine is through podcasting. So I feel like this conversation timing is so perfectly aligned to what I'm doing with the launch of the Guide Your Light network that has just come about. And of course, what you continue to do. So exciting times. Yes. But I want to know, you share people's stories all the time. That's something that you do today. We get to share your story, which is always good to do as well. But where did your passion for the power of story emerge?
Well, it was back when I was in my 20s and I was a youth worker. So I worked for the Department of Human Services and worked in a medium-term unit that had stand-up night shift. Put it this way, we had a alarm on our belts that was the same level as armed robbery. So they were the type of children that I worked with. But the thing is that they were obviously there for reasons that I believe it was not their fault, because they were no longer able to live at home and they were young adolescents and they were just finding their place in the world, and maybe had been, born into a family that the parents couldn't cope. Some of the parents were in jail, different circumstances. But these kids were just lost. And by just sitting with them sometimes and telling them a story, like, I had a friend that, was brought up in a home that wasn't exactly how they wanted it to be. But they decided that they would do this, this, and that. And they would write down all the things that they wanted to do. And I would tell stories like that, as some people call it, the My Friend John stories. And I would see these kids light up with a bit of hope, light up with a little bit of a, could I do that too? Somebody that I would share a story about that may be similar. There were so many kids that I met without sort of saying who they were. I'd say, I met a young girl that was like this, or I met a young boy that did this. So just by telling story, I didn't know at the time, but the power that had and the impact it had on those young children to say, maybe I could too. And no one wants to be told, right? No one wants to be told what to do. So if I said to the child, hey, you need to find something that you enjoy. What are we going to do? Are we going to do netball? We're going to do basketball. You need to do something. You need to do this. No one wants to be told, especially kids like that, So by the power of story and sharing with them, it allows the listener or the reader, the person hearing that story, to make their own choice, to make their own decision on how that reflects to them. And so it allowed these children to say, do you think I could do basketball too? Or it might have been something as simple as that. But they then chose. And I said, yeah, absolutely, you could do that. So they had something that was lighting them up, something that they could look forward to, something that they chose to do so that they made the shift rather than being told. And so that's where I suppose the first epiphany of the power of story came from, where, just telling a story, reading, listening to a story can really shift and change someone's life.
Absolutely agree with you. It's a good tip for parenting too, actually, what you just said. And that's something that I do with my kids is, you explain through story about previous experiences that you've had or other people, and they can take their own insight out of it without being, that message being shoved at them and forcefully. I always say story invokes emotion, and emotion is what makes the memory stick. So, once you feel something after you've heard a story, you can't forget it, and it changes you in some way. And you talk about a lot in your work that stories create healing and growth. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you're so passionate about that as well?
Yeah, look, I came from a coaching background, and I worked with Dr. John Gray, the famous author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and I was his very first female coach in the world. And obviously, through reading his works, it transformed my relationship as I understood men and women more. I understood myself more. And what I found was that, by reading his knowledge that I didn't have myself, I could make a shift in my life. And so as a coach, there was only so many people I could help because I only had so much knowledge and I only had so much stories that were within my lifetime. And so for me, understanding that everyone else has stories, everyone else has something to teach that I could learn off them. It was basically the transition for me was that everyone has a story and everyone has something to share. And so it was not just what I had, it was what could I learn from others? And then what could other people learn from others? So it's like that ripple effect.
Oh, yes. All of us have a book in our lives, right? That has just absolutely changed us and shifted us and been that thing that you can't unread or unhear or unsee. I know, I've got books on my bookshelf that I've purchased many copies of just to hand them out because I'm like, I hope they have this same impact on you. This has completely changed the way that I think about things. Is there one out there for you that's been, a life changer in particular? I know you've probably got hundreds, but is there one that sort of stands out or will jump off your bookshelf to be that thing that really shook you?
Yeah, look, I think that obviously Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus is a one that made a shift in my relationship, and not just my relationship to my partner, but relationship to myself, relationship to my children, relationship to my team. And you talked before about, the power of telling your children stories, for example, and how that can shift their lives. One of the things that I got from the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus was how girls and boys are different, and there's even a book that he writes about children are from heaven. And he talks about, the difference between male and female. But the one thing that stood out from that book, I think and the reason I go back to that book was because it taught me the power of listening, and especially for women. See, women need to be heard and understood, and so do little girls. And I'm not saying boys don't, but girls, the way I kind of explain it is, and I'm sure you will agree, and sometimes people don't know this, but women talk out their problems. They might talk out with their friends or talk out, and that's how they hear themselves and then come back into their mind to process it. That's kind of how sometimes we don't even need to, like men want to do, is fix and solution it and give us the answers. We're quite, clever within ourselves to come up with the answers as we're talking them out. Whereas men or boys will go away and they'll process it in their mind and then they'll speak out their solution or their answer. And so what I got out of that book that stood out for me was the power of listening. And so when my girls would come home from school, I mean, they're grown up, nearly 30 and 27, and made me a grandmother and all those things. But at the time when they were in primary school, they come home and they go, Mary said this and Sally said this, and, and they having their little, bickers at school or things that have upset them. And I would, at first go straight into the solution because I'm the mum and I want to fix it and I want to make it all nice. I mean, it's with your kids, right? But what I did was stop. So that book that got me to understand the differences made me stop and just listen and just say, sounds like you had a really hard day today. Would you like a juice or would you like something, whatever that might be? And what that shifted for me was have my kids feel that they could come home and talk to me about anything without being judged, because the next day they were back out in the playground playing and they were friends again, right? But when we go, well, what did she do and what did you do and how did that happen? And we're trying to kind of figure out, and they just wanted to be heard and understood. So I think that the book that stands out is still for me Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, because it taught me so much about relationships, not just with my partner, but to myself, to my children, to my team, to everybody. And I feel that if your relationships are working well, so do we. And so, that's probably the long-winded, but how I got so much from that book that wasn't just, what it was to mean about men and women.
And of course, it was the catalyst to what you're doing today, which is extra special. So I love that you love the contents of that book so much as well. All right. So I want to shift the narrative a little bit, because I want people listening to learn how they, if it's something in their mind that they've been thinking about for a while, how they can potentially write their own book or publish their own book or be part of a book, because there's a lot of different ways these days. It's not just jumping in front of a typewriter and smashing out, text anymore. It's not that olden way of what we perceive about writing a book anymore, is it? And you are shifting this industry. You are shaking it up. Tell me about how Dean Publishing is doing that and what you guys are all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we just launched another of John Gray's book because, of course, I've become a good friend of his, and we published a book with him, and we did a compilation style book. So we have many ways where if you don't feel that you've got a whole book in you just yet, you can do a compilation style book. So we have a series called Why Shift, which stands for Your Share It Forward Teachings. And the Why Shift series covers things like health, wealth, business, relationships, mindset. And so by collaborating in a book that's a part of a series, it's really telling your story in a way that can be shared not only with your people that are within your network, but there's other people that are in the book or in the series that are sharing forward your teaching. So it's a ripple effect again. So if you don't have a full book, that's how you can be part of a book in a series and share forward your teachings and your knowledge and leave your legacy in the world. And that's done by interview. So we've got a team of ghostwriters, editors here that know the book publishing industry and know how to take your big story and what I call sometimes waffle, because that's what I do sometimes. I'll waffle away and they'll cut it down into that beautiful, succinct, easy to read chapter that is amazing for our readers to read. So that's one way of doing it. And again, the other way is that some people feel, I don't have a story in me, or I don't have enough to say. And so because we are not only just publishers and editors and ghostwriters, I work with the person to help them create the structure so that we know what to put where, so that they, if they've got the content there, we can definitely help them write a book. And as you said, the old typewriters, I must say, I did learn on a typewriter where I had liquid paper for those that can remember those days, or, and then we got really, crafty and put the liquid paper strips in and you just press that letter again and it'd remove it. So those exciting times, or, a laptop. Some people are really good at writing. And that's great. They can get into the flow and write. Some people are better at speaking and some people are better at being guided about where, they can go. So I found that gap in the market. So in traditional publishing, for those that don't know, you pretty much got to have a manuscript ready to submit and then hope that they'll take it. And you may not have been able to be guided enough to have that really good structure in a book. So I found that gap in the market. Also that the author didn't own the rights to their book, that the publisher owned the rights. And then what if they wanted to sell it off their own website and do all these other things with it? So and then there's the self-publishing arm, which obviously people have got to go figure it out themselves and get an editor that understands who they are and as a person and how they like to get their information out. So we I developed the team that will take a person and hold their hand from concept of idea right through to published book and distributed book. And that's done through, people talking it out. Some people a bit of both, a bit of talking, a bit of writing. But like I said, we hold their hand through the whole process. And that's where our point of difference is, because we're entrepreneurs ourselves, and we know that the whole purpose of sharing a story forward is, writing a book and publishing a book is not just about sharing your information where people get, a shift or a impact from who you are, but it lifts your authority, and it shows people if they want to get more, if they want to listen to your podcast, if they want to hire you as a speaker or come and do some training with you, whatever it is that you do in your business, we want the book to not be a sales brochure, but we want it to be a way to lift your authority and show you and what you do as your expertise and your story, and bring it all together in a beautifully presented book. So that's probably what we do differently. And also our books are interactive, which is also pretty exciting, where not only do people get a physical book, an ebook on Amazon and so forth, but you also get the opportunity to have an interactive book, which allows the reader to have a whole new experience of auditory, visual, videos, downloads, links through to different areas, additional information, and so much more. So that's kind of where we found would support the author best, but also support the reader who's going to be consuming this amazing story and information as well.
Oh, I love that. Books are no longer just paper and ink anymore, are they? They are so much more, and so much can be built off that. I love what you said about the hand-holding element, because a lot of people think that, I think this too, that, you need to go and dedicate a year off grid to get the content out of your brain and onto paper. And, you're probably dealing, Susan, with a lot of entrepreneurial type people, time poor people who can't dedicate that, that chunk of time off to go and do that. So it sounds a bit like a dream where you get to have someone sitting by your side, bouncing ideas off, verbally expressing what it is that you're trying to get across through conversation. For someone like me, that sounds so exciting, because I am a conversationalist, and that is the way that I express ideas. And, things pop up because of conversations. If someone asks me a question, I'll be like blurting out this amazing answer that almost doesn't feel like it's coming from me, and I didn't even think about, and wouldn't probably have happened if someone didn't ask me the question. So I feel like this is such an exciting new way of crafting a story, but putting it into a book. So exciting.
Yeah, and just having, you're exactly right. Sometimes people might, talk out their book on, and get it transcribed and things like that. But it's very different having someone there with you, like we are, on Zoom, or people listening to this podcast now. When someone says, "Oh, tell me a little bit more about that," because you as the author may think, "Oh, this isn't a big deal." And then things that you think are a big deal, we might challenge you on and say, "That thing that you thought wasn't a big deal, tell me more about that. Like, this could land in this part of the book so perfectly. Tell me more about that." And so you've got a coach, an author coach with you every step of the way that draws things out that you may not have come up with on your own. And they'll ask you to elaborate, or they'll get your extended story and bring it down into something succinct and sharp and impactful. And so it's having that person to work with you to craft it, somebody that is the editor that knows books, that, all my authors, editors, they're all bookworms. They read so many books, which gives them knowledge and ways of saying, "That's been done a little bit too much. What if we put this spin on it to make it very unique to you?" So you've got experts not only helping grab your content, but they're helping craft it so that it's uniquely yours. And they're helping you bring those little things to light that you may not think are impactful. And they're like, "No, this is gold. Let's put this in, because I can see it really resonating with the reader because they could, now go off and learn more about this XYZ. So it's very bespoke, it's very personalized, and it's one-to-one. Even though we do have like writers retreats that we're opening up now, all the shutdowns have happened, we're opening up for people to come and use the beautiful center to get their creative juices flowing and work with the team. But we help people write their books from all over the world with the beautiful advancement of Zoom, and everyone understands that we've written books for people over in Africa and all parts of the world. That's been amazing. But it's that guided writing, that supported writing that has the person, it's a lot of effort and time and investment to get a book. So I always say, make sure it's the best that you can have it be. And we also help people through author anxiety, and we help them through procrastination, and we help them through perfectionism and all those things that come when we're about to launch something out into the world. So we're not just supporting you in the content, we're supporting you emotionally through the journey as well, because things do come up as we're starting to share our story or our lessons that we want to impart on the world.
Oh yes, the comparisonitis, the self-doubt, the self-judgment, all of that stuff that I'm sure would come up when you're sharing your story, and coming from a place of wanting to help and teach people. But yeah, it's definitely like, am I good enough? Is this, content quality enough? Is it actually going to help people who even wants to hear this? So, for me, having someone, I interviewed Dr. John DeMartini recently, and he talks a lot about delegation. So finding experts who are really great at what they do to help you, because we don't have to do things alone. And especially as a solopreneur, entrepreneur, people listening to this probably are in that space of going, hey, why don't I find someone who's done this before and have them, sort of guide me through the best steps, so I don't have to make the errors along the way and learn from this experience and make expensive mistakes. So it's such a
exactly right. I've learned that being a business owner. I always say, the amount of time it takes for you to learn it, do it, the costly mistakes. I've heard horror stories along the way where people have done it and arrived and they're printing and their spine's out and it just hasn't landed and all the formatting's wrong and they've left things out, and just so much that horror stories along the way, and they've come back to me and said, I need to start again and do it properly. We've heard that many a times, but you're 100% right. I think that as a solopreneur, which I started, obviously I've got a big team now, but when I started on my own, the amount of times it took me to learn, they say build your own website and do this and that. Yeah, that's all and well, but the amount of time that you spend building and doing this, you would be much better paying an expert and then you getting back to what you do best. Obviously, I love my beautiful garden here. I'd kill every plant out there. I get somebody to come and do my gardening, someone that knows what each plant needs to look after it. My automation systems and things like that. By the time I figure out how to do all of this, I have a team of experts that do it. So you're absolutely right. Or the amount of time that it's taken, for example, yourself to get your podcast going and set up, all those lessons that you've learned, everything you've learned along the way. Now you can help others create that for themselves. By the time they figure it out themselves, they would have been better off investing in an expert, getting it done, and then using that power of that product and service or education to excel where they already are at. So it's the time that it takes that is wasted when you're trying to figure it out yourself that I learned along the way, that I definitely pay experts for things that I'm not the expert in. And the whole reason too why I've built a team of experts, because I'm not the graphic designer. I'm not the ghostwriter and editor. My team are experts to do that, but I help people make sure that they've got the business element or the education element set up in their book before they go away and work with my amazing team that are the specialists in what they do.
I definitely learned that the hard way too, Susan. So I think we need to learn that ourselves at the right time. But you touched on this earlier in regards to building authority around your voice, which I'm very passionate about as well. So in particular, how do you use books for these authors, let's call them, to build that authority? around their voice? What are the ways that, say, for me, I'm like the perfect example right now. I've just launched a podcast network. I've launched an online course to help people share their voice through podcasting. And a book is definitely in the pipeline for me at some point. But to elevate my voice further and then also elevate my brand further, what steps would someone take? Like, if I was to come to you and ask you that question?
We basically talk about the Dean's formula. So let's look at it in that sense. So first of all, it's design. You look at your design. How do you want to design your life, your business? Some people have got some of these areas sorted, but we go through and we look at, well, have you got your branding? But what I think is most important when designing, to elevate your authority is, and looking at your brand is, what is it that you want to be known for? And what is it that you want people to know about you? Because we can have all the most beautiful website and the beautiful branding and everything else, but if no one knows about you, then there's no way that you can obviously grow your business, your authority. So a book to me it stands the test of time. Story's been with us forever. Books have been with us. They're not going. Even though we've got ebooks, I don't think the paperback books will ever go. We all love to hold something in our hand, and even more so now that everything's electronic. We like to receive a package in the mail and a book. Where I see a book so important is that a book isn't something that you're saying, I'm this and I'm that and all of that. It's just really a way of artfully telling people who you are. And a book is like a gift to the world, where you're sharing your education, you're sharing your information literally for under $40 sort of thing, $50 or $30, whatever that might be, the price of your book. So for me, it's a gift that you get to share. It shows your authority because we can talk in third person, like we can promote you in the bio and tell about you as the author. This is the author and this is what they do. But I think that by you sharing forward your knowledge and people reading that book, they're getting more and more understanding of who you are and what you do. And so when a book's done well, they say, wow, if I got that much from a book, what would I get if I worked with her as a coach, or I worked and did her course, or whatever it is that you're doing? So a book gives that authority, and it just packages something up that you can gift to somebody by giving them something they can hold in their hand. The other way is that for your target market, depending on who you are, you can send the book out in the mail. You can do things like that, but also jumping on other podcasts. Even if you run your own podcast, everyone loves an author of a book. Free media. I've got a book. Media love people that are author of a book. Why? Because they've got something that they can also promote at the end. The other thing is lifting the authority. It's like, well, if this person's going to put all their information in a book, they're probably pretty legit because they're putting this out there into Amazon, into bookstores, out into the world. So it's kind of like that trust. I get to know, like, and trust you from a book or through educating in different forms. So I think, the book as a physical product is always great to have, even if you're speaking, selling at the back of the room and things like that. So it's about, we might know about you, but do we know everything about you? What I think is different now is people aren't attracted to just brand. They're attracted to the person behind the brand, the story behind the brand. We want to know, do I know you? Do I like you? Do I trust you? And so, basically, when we've got stories at the moment where there's brands that are out there that are in Coles and Woolworths and out there, but no one knows how did they get there. So when someone is attracted to the backstory, they're even more inclined to want to be a part of you because they're just like, oh, they didn't just do this for the money. They didn't just build this to make money. They're doing it because it's their soul, their passion, their heartfelt way that they want to help others and make a difference. So I think that when you talk about yourself, I'm sure that the listeners will know bits about you, but will they know everything? Will they know what struggles you went through? What are the highs? What are the lows? What got you to be so passionate about starting your own podcast and then helping others with their podcast? And so when people read about that, they're going, well, she knows what she's talking about. She's the expert. She's the authority. Oh my gosh, I really resonate with this person. I connect with them. They're not, they're a real person that's got real knowledge and expertise. And so the book can be a great lead generator. It can be a great sort of way. So I don't know whether I've answered that in a roundabout way, but whoever it is, they've always got knowledge or something to share. And I just feel that a book just allows someone for a little investment to be nurtured a bit before they're about to invest in whatever else it is that the author is offering, speaking from stage coaching, training.
Definitely. You know what I heard there? A book gives you street cred, street credibility. And it's interesting as a podcast producer as well, when I do look for interviewees to invite on and guests to invite on, I regularly jump onto publishing platforms such as Hay House, for example, and yours. And I look for people who have just launched a book because I know, A, they have something important to share that is worth sharing. They've invested the time in crafting their story so powerfully, and they are linked to an overarching publishing company that I also align with. So I'll go directly to the ones that I align with. And I know pretty much every time, I'm giving Hay House as an example, if I go on there, I know every author will align very easily to what I am sharing on my podcast. And the same with yours. You seem to create books. They're not. It's all around development and growth and personal development, I suppose, and self-improvement. That's sort of the main direction of the work that you publish, isn't it?
Absolutely. And look, some of them are business owners. We're doing some amazing books of branded products that some people might know, like Bang & Body, and we've got Macro Mike and KX Pilates, and a lot of brands that people may know. That's just some of them, but you may not know the story behind it. And it's really interesting when you might buy the product because you like the feel of it on your skin. If it's, the Bang & Body and you like the cream, or you're eating Macro Mike's, yummy pancakes and muffins, but do you know the story of why they did it? And when you get to read, I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag because these are books that are coming out. But when you find out the story of, it's not just they came up with a cream so that they could make lots of money. It's not that they came up with a product because they went, I'm going to get that into Coles and Woolworths and make lots of money. When you actually understand the story behind it, when you're buying the product, you're even more enrolled because you're like, wow, like they're really making a difference with this product. I love the product, but now I know the story behind it, I'm even more enrolled in the product. So even if they're established companies, they, are still enrolling people into why they got into it, and, even with KX Pilates, he's now branching out and obviously selling, franchisees and licensees. And there's lots of other exciting people that we're talking to with their books. But as soon as I know the backstory, I said, you're already successful, but this is going to make you even more successful because people are going to be more enrolled, let alone when you're not known. And so when you're not known, the best way to get known is through a book, because you're now somebody that has a book, just like Oprah Winfrey, just like, Anthony Robbins and all the other amazing authors that are known. By you becoming a published author of a really great book starts to lift you as your profile, but people get to know that backstory and they're more enrolled in you. And, a book's here forever. So even if you do, move into other areas, it's not going to change because it was who you were. It's still you. It's just that chapter in your life. And we've had people come back now to write their second book. It didn't change their first book. They're now selling more of their first book because they've published their second book. So there's things like that can happen. So never worry about being the right time. Do I have enough information? Will my story matter? Every single story matters. But if we hold on to it, we're not sharing forward our teachings, we're not sharing forward what it is that we've got. Therefore, people won't get to know us, people that we don't know yet. And that's what a book does as well. It expands your reach. When you've got your book on Amazon and different areas like that in the right categories, it expands your reach so that you're bringing in the right people to work with rather than, working with just anybody. You're drawing in the people that read your book that say, this is what I want to be a part of. I resonate with this author. What else is she or he doing that I could be a part of?
I love it. I love everything you're putting out there, Susan. And it's, very much links to what I do as well. And by what you're saying, you are saying saying that every person has a story worth telling, not just the well-known people, not just, those big experts that everyone knows their names, not about, it is all of you listening, everyone listening has a story worth telling, and experiences worth sharing, and lessons that other people can learn from. So it's so exciting.
Yeah, you could be anybody. Like, we've got a young lady who came into our Y Shift Mindset series, and she works in Darwin up in an aviation center and loves it. And she's just told her story because she was bullied when she was younger, and she wanted to share and make a change. And she said, if just one person reads my story and listens to my story, then I would have made an impact in the world. And she did. She had a young boy that didn't want to go to school, that got himself up and went to school and become captain, and he's doing extraordinary things with businesses and governments and everything like that, just because he heard the power of her story and said, well, if she can do it, I can too. And that's what the power of story does. So the stories can be anything. We've had some extraordinary life lesson stories that have been shared, that people just want to do it to make an impact in the world. And also some people are using it obviously to grow their business, but they're solely wanting to just share all the stories. So everybody has a story, something that they can leave as a legacy that can make a difference to the readers' lives. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Susan, for your time today. If anyone wants to look you up, I'll put the links in the show notes for anyone to be able to access and reach out, and perhaps go join you in that beautiful Dean Manor. I would love to walk through those gardens. They look exquisite.
Yes, they really are.
Thanks, Susan. Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favourite listening platform.